The genre of science fiction is vast. There are thousands and thousands of books to be discovered and enjoyed. And there are also a fair bit of books that are just uninspired or just downright bad. Many of these books are derivative and shallow and just don't offer anything new to the genre. I recently completed the first book in the Expanse series, Leviathan Wakes. I was amazed by how authors Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham were able to work within the genre, building on some older science fiction concepts while offering a fresh new lens through which to view them. The series follows human society in its early stages of space colonization, and I can say with certainty that the first book was a great introduction into its complex and deeply thoughtful narrative. But this video isn't about The Expanse. This video is about the novel that is often cited as the best-selling science fiction book in history, Dune. Dune is a book for fans who have read a lot of the genre and are now looking for a challenge. Dune is not an easy read by any stretch of the imagination, but the journey that Frank Herbert takes us on through his series and the lessons that we are taught along the way make the story worthwhile. In this video, I will do my best to list some of the top reasons why the Dune saga is actually worth your time. This video will contain minimal spoilers, I assure you. The beauty of the writing. The beautiful language that Frank Herbert utilizes throughout his series is one of the main things that makes Dune stand out. Herbert has a way of imbuing his words with a kind of mysterious power that makes you want to contemplate single passages for hours on end. The poetic nature of Frank's writing makes Dune feel operatic and epic, giving the reader a sense of grandiosity. It can be somewhat challenging to decipher the meaning behind the lyrical language of Dune, especially for those that are used to more straightforward styles of writing. Frank Herbert actually carefully designed the rhythm of Dune to influence the human mind subconsciously. This happens in many poems. The poem then develops a certain fixed rhythm. Now, by changing the phraseology, the placement of words, you can change that rhythm. You can slow it down, you can speed it up. Well, there is an analogous thing in prose: length of sentence, modifying clauses, variety of sentence structure. All of these things control the pace of controlled reading. Frank Herbert believed that even when language was read silently, it was still received subconsciously as an oral transmission. Frank Herbert wrote Dune the way he did purposely to control the oral pacing of the narrative. Herbert described the pacing of Dune as a colloidal rhythm, starting slowly and gradually building all the way up and stopping suddenly at a non-breaking point. Frank Herbert intended the reader to skid out of the first book, trailing parts of it with them. Learn the origin of many science fiction tropes. Dune was written in 1965 and has gone on to influence the entire genre. Frank Herbert famously pointed out that there were 16 points of identity between Dune and Star Wars. Frank Herbert believed that this was in no way a coincidence. At UCLA in 1985 during a talk, Frank Herbert calculated that it was a statistical impossibility, stating, "The odds of that being a coincidence, there aren't that many stars in the universe." George Lucas no doubt borrowed many elements from the Dune saga, but the main themes of both series are actually quite different. There are many other works that have borrowed elements from Dune as well. The extremely expensive substance, the spice melange, which had properties which extended life for those who ingested it, likely inspired Poulsen treatments from Dan Simmons' Hyperion Cantos, and almost certainly inspired the substance known as booster spice from Larry Niven's Ringworld series. And the list goes on and on. Frank Herbert's influence even extended out to the fantasy genre, with Robert Jordan likely modeling the Aes Sedai on the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood. If you'd like to hear more about this specific comparison, check out this video I did not too long ago. Dune also inspired the graphic novel The Inkle, written by Alejandro Jodorowsky, which itself went on to inspire the movie The Fifth Element. Even Sean Murray, creator of the exploratory science fiction game No Man's Sky, said that Dune was his favorite book ever and had a giant influence on who he is as a person. No doubt, Dune's cultural impact has been massive. Expansive, imaginative stories. Frank Herbert believed that stories that were remembered sparked sparks in the minds of the reader. Though a lot of things borrowed from Dune, there really is no story quite like the one portrayed in the Dune saga. The original saga's narrative goes on for thousands of years. We see the Empire rise and fall and rise again. We see the culture of the Imperium as it changes and evolves. We even see how their language evolves over time. Frank Herbert also filled his universe with many different groups of human beings, each competing, like the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood, who desired a specific kind of power. They wished to create the ultimate psychological weapon. Or the Tleilax-Su, the technocratic xenophobes on the Empire's edge, who had twisted ambitions of their own. Or the Ixians, the masters of technological innovation in the Imperium. They sometimes pushed the bounds of the ban of thinking machines, and could very well invent catastrophe for all. The world building, or more accurately put, universe building in the Dune Saga is absolutely phenomenal. Lessons to be learned. There are many valuable things that one can take from the Dune Saga. Let's look at how Frank Herbert presents morality and ethics, for instance. Morality and ethics are two words that are closely tied, but there is a very distinct difference. Morality refers to a person's internal sense of right and wrong, while ethics stem from a social system. Ethics are rules governed by society. At the same time, there are collective moral norms. Take Fremen culture, for example. Their moral norms are dictated by the conditions of their environment. Moral injunctions grew out of necessity. Ethics are formed when a person recognizes the consequences of moral law and modifies it. For example, in the book Dune, Fremen morals dictate that a new leader must call out the old one. They expect Paul to do this, but Paul recognizes the usefulness of the old leader and knows that it would be a loss for them all. Here, Paul modifies the Fremen moral norm using ethics, and this is just one example. The Dune Saga is filled with these types of philosophical lessons. Frank Herbert's goal was not only to entertain the reader, but to make the reader think about the meta-message beyond what is presented on the surface. I actually ended up writing a lot more here about how Frank Herbert presents the struggle between morality and ethics, but I decided that that needs its own video. There is so much to be said about Dune, but obviously most of it can't be said without spoilers. As I have always maintained, Dune is not an easy read, but it is a rewarding one. If you want to know more about the Dune series, click on the Dune playlist in the description of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And if you want to support this channel, click the Patreon link in the description. Also, check me out on Twitter and Facebook.